Mohan is a pharmacist over at the University of, what is it, Georgetown University out in DC, and works with some of our doctors, Dr. Pagan and Dr. Torres-Yagi. Has a very interesting background in helping some of their patients get their medications, and is hopefully going to help us demystify some of those challenges that I'm sure many of you have run into. Just a couple of housekeeping things. My name is Rebecca. I am the Chief Strategy Officer here at PMD Alliance. And have with me Kelly Merkel, who many of you I'm sure have seen in the background. She will make sure that any things that you've missed or links or information get put into the chat. For those of you who have joined us before, as you know, we do use our chat often when you have questions, so please make sure to use that. We will be keeping an eye on that, and we'll try to make sure that your questions get answered. As well, if you want to maybe say where you are coming from, where you are right now. Typically, I'm over in Southern California. Today, I'm on the East Coast. It is much rainier than in Southern California, a little bit more chilly. But where's everybody tuning in from? And we can kind of start there. And Mohan, I'd love for you to maybe take a moment and maybe introduce yourself and maybe give everybody a little bit of background about who you are and how you came to where you're at right now.
Sure. My name is Mohan, as Rebecca has mentioned. Good afternoon, everyone. Been a pharmacist for about 22 years. I spent almost 20 years in Florida, in Miami and the Broward area. Been doing specialty pharmacy since 2010. Over the years, I've worked with many neurologists across many disease states. And here, I moved to MedStar from Miami back in 2020, right before COVID, to start a specialty pharmacy program for all the MedStar clinics. And not only Georgetown, MedStar has about 10 different hospitals, about 300 different clinics. In that process, I met Dr. Yagi, and I personally have experience, taking care of movement disorder patients from Florida. So I do know what are the challenges that they go through. So we connected very well from the beginning, and he has walked us through the challenges that they go through, and I totally understand where they're coming from. That's where and I was start supporting their clinics about three and a half years ago. So today, all their patients goes through our program, and we navigate that process. So in the process, uh, probably the most challenging disease state of all specialties is movement disorder. Not necessarily because it's an expensive, and I think there's quite a few parts that we need to connect. We need someone that can connect the bridge between the providers and the patients and the pharmacies. That's what has become my passion for past 3 4 years, helping every single disease state at our MedStar facilities. So this is where I am. So
Yeah, and we know that access to the medications that could really impact our quality of life is just a huge challenge. And there's a lot of different, as you said, specialties that are that have challenges in finding access. So I know that you have some slides prepared for us. And you have said that you would love for it to be interactive. So as you have questions, like I said, please put them into the chat, or you can send them directly to me or Kelly. And just so we can make it more interactive. And they're all good questions. So if you have them, please feel free to ask.
so I'll try to share my screen. Let me know, Rebecca, when you see it. Uh, are you able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Right. So the background behind this is, Nisha asked me about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, like, Mohan, would you mind sharing your experience? Then I was thinking, like, what is the best way to format this? Uh, uh, then I try to put myself as a patient or a caregiver. With that all that experience that I've seen on the provider side as well as on the patient side, if I were a patient or a caregiver, what information would help me to navigate this process? So from there, I kind of constructed these few slides. Hopefully, that gives you an orientation, and hopefully that helps you all navigating these drugs going forward. Uh, when you talk about these movement disorder drugs, especially the Parkinson's, if you look into the disease state, the drugs have been there for a very long time, starting with Sinemet. Ever since you have some new drugs come into the market, and if you want to access these new drugs, that's where the real challenges come into play. So I kind of divided the thought process into three different segments. And I wanted to give a perspective from doctor's perspective, what are the challenges that they face, and also from the patient's perspective, what are the challenges you go through, and what can we do from there to bridge that gap. So when we talk about these medications, the access to these medications, the first and foremost comes all of these prescriptions, especially if you are getting the advanced therapeutics, they all need prior authorization. That is one of the biggest hassle that the providers go through. And again, there is no visibility from the patient side. You may go to the doctor's office, doctor may prescribe a medication, and you don't know what's happening with it. Your pharmacy may be telling that the insurance is not approving. So I want to discuss a bit about what are the challenges doctors have, and how you could help the doctor when you go and see the doctor. That could help them to get these prior authorizations quickly. And then once the authorization goes away, then dealing with these multiple pharmacies. It's not that all these drugs are available at any pharmacy. You have certain drugs that are available only at few pharmacies. And then again, your insurance, based on whatever the insurance you have, they have their own preferred specialty pharmacies that they want you to go and get their medications from. So how do you understand all of that? So I wanted to
And we did
spend, yeah.
have a quick question. You had mentioned prior authorization, and can you explain what that means, like in the simplest terms? What is prior
Totally.
authorization?
Totally. So what the prior authorization means is, and I'll go to the next, probably I have written a little bit here. So this is what getting an insurance company approval for a medication, what that really means. Challenges from the physician's perspective. Prior authorization, this is what that means. Like, whenever an insurance company uh, thinks there is a cheap alternative, which is equally effective, and if the doctor wants to prescribe a different medication other than the cheaper alternative that insurance have, the insurance wants the doctor to justify why the doctor thinks this new medication is what needed for this particular patient. That's when the doctor would have to go to the insurance company and submit that clinical information and make a justification, give a patient history, and this is the reason why whatever the insurance company's alternative that they're showing is not ideal for my patient. So please approve this new product. Is that helpful?
So someone said, so they don't just take the doctor's word?
No, no. See, exactly. They will take the doctor's word. The question is that communication, how the doctor is going to give that word, and who is he going to give it's a process. Then yes, they will take the doctor's word, provided the doctor can make a strong case defending that newer medication is far better than the cheaper alternative that the insurance companies want you to try. They would, but today the doctors do not have the bandwidth in their clinics to make that happen. Calling the insurance company, picking up the phone, calling the insurance company, or filling the paper form and faxing the papers and the clinical notes to them and wait for their decisions to come in. It's that process. That's what the chaos that happens at the clinic.
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know you're planning to go through a little bit more about what that means for the physician, so that we can also talk about what does that mean for me if I want to advocate for myself.
Exactly right. So that's what I wanted to, I want, that's why the next slide would be what, a patient could do. I just want to have them an idea, the challenges the physicians go through. The biggest problem, as I mentioned now, that all the Parkinson's drugs have same FDA approved indications. You take Sinemet, carbidopa, levodopa, all the way to there is a new drug that came in a couple of days ago for Sinemet. They all have same FDA approved indications. What that means in insurance companies' eyes is, hey, to me, they all are equal. So hence they all are equal. I want you to try the patient with this cheapest alternative. That's the logic what the insurance companies come with. When they come with that logic, if the doctor wants to call the insurance company and then, tell them why that drug is not appropriate, why this newer drug is appropriate, these are the things that they needed to have. One, we don't see typically a lot of the doctors are updating all the history of the patient medications. When the doctor makes that phone call to the insurance company, this is how the discussion is going to be. Hey, my patient has been diagnosed with this Parkinson's disease since 2010. Since then, they have tried X, Y, Z, and now I want this new drug. So if you look into the charts, this is a common thing that we find out when we're trying to help the doctors to get the prior authorizations. The doctors usually don't have that entire history of what the patient have tried. Our patient might have gone to a different doctor for the first 5 years. When they change their doctor, they might not have updated the doctor with all the drugs that they have tried. That is one of the biggest issues the doctors would go through. And also that's going to be a challenge when they try to convince the insurance company, hey, my patient has tried, all these 3 different alternatives. Now I need the 4th one. So that's one of those issues. And the second piece you will come across very common at the clinics is clinics bill your medical insurance, and they always wanted to get your medical insurance onto their files, but not necessarily the pharmacy insurance. But that's what I always ask our patients. Like when you go and see your doctor, make sure the front desk employee gets both your medical and pharmacy insurance as well. Because this is what happens. When a doctor prescribes that medication, if they want to call that pharmacy benefits to do a prior authorization, they don't have your insurance information. They don't know who to call. So that is one of the biggest barriers. So those are the challenges the doctors go through. So here, what we could do, what a caregiver and what a patient could do. This is what I thought about. This is what I would like to have, provide a complete list of all Parkinson's drugs tried over the years to the physician. And a lot of the times, the physicians struggle to document everything. So if you could ask them, doc, please have all of this list documented somewhere on my chart. Eventually, it's going to be helpful down the line. Whenever I may have to be moved on to the new advanced therapeutics, it will be easier for all of us to get the prior auth, and be proactive in that, trying to give that entire drug history. And also, I kind of put a list of drugs that consistently needs a prior authorization. If one of those drugs getting prescribed when you visit your doctor, it should come to your mind, oh, this drug needs a prior authorization. So you could start alerting the physician as well. Because the physicians would not know what are the drugs that needs prior authorizations, what are the ones your insurance may not require a prior authorization. So usually what they do, they prescribe a drug, the prescription goes to your local Walgreens or CVS, and they would wait until the Walgreens and CVS tells them, hey, this particular prescription needs a prior authorization. That may take days. And that only if you have a very responsible pharmacist on the other side to send a fax to the doctor's office. If that fax is not coming to the doctor's office, the doctor would never know that this drug needs a prior authorization. The doctors would be thinking that, I sent a prescription, patient has been taking this medication. So, that is one of the biggest gap what we see as a pharmacist. We do see that gap, that prior authorizations not get done on a timely manner, and without the authorization, no pharmacy can be able to dispense the medication. So the next one is, I kind of put an example at the bottom, what your pharmacy insurance would look like. So if you look into it, it's a BIN, PC, and group and issue. This is what pays your pharmacy benefits. Those are the ID numbers that the doctor needs to submit the prior authorization for. So if a physician has those numbers available right at the clinic, the prior authorization takes no more than 2 minutes. That's what I always, if I were a caregiver, or if I were a patient, if I know the doctor is changing my medication to one of these medications that happens to have a prior authorization, then I would ask, doc, and I already have my pharmacy insurance at the front desk. It only takes no more. Every doctor knows how to use the electronic platforms to do the prior authorization. My chart already have all the history of my drugs, and this drug needs a prior authorization. You also have my pharmacy insurance. Please take that 2 minutes and submit that prior authorization. And almost 70 to 80% of the prior authorizations, once the doctor submits, within a minute, they will come with an approval. So those are the things that, if I were a patient or a caregiver, would like to make sure I understand what my doctor goes through, and I provide everything my doctor, might need in order for me to get this prior authorization done on timely manner. And any questions or anything on that authorization piece?
I haven't seen any questions just yet, but we have had a couple of comments that these are some really good tips that you have of like, what can I do? I know that depending on who I have for insurance, sometimes my pharmacy card is different than my insurance card. I think somebody said about they have United for insurance, but the different medication plan. And so if you have two different cards, I would never just hand over that prescription card. So also making sure that the doctor's office has both of those when you first get into, like, when you check in, like, say you got a new insurance, especially if it's taking you 6 months to a year sometimes in some of these clinics to get in, just making sure that they have all of your updated information, including that prescription card. Yeah, and someone just said, I wish doctors asked us this and we didn't have to manage it for them, but I get they're overloaded and busy.
So this is how we bridge that. I mean, these are the small things that how we can empower ourselves to make things happen. So yeah. So I have Anisha has mentioned that maybe we could print and give it to the patients as well, that they could have the sheet with them. Like if you are ever going to be, if your doctor ever going to prescribe any of these drugs on this list, these are the common drugs in the movement disorder that needs a prior authorization. So, for example, if the doctor is about to change you from carbidopa, levodopa to Rytary, then doc, this prescription needs a prior authorization. Your front office already have my pharmacy benefit insurance information. Would you mind taking that a minute to submit prior authorization rather than wait for my pharmacy to send you a fax? So that's how you take things, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit, since you've been talking obviously about prior authorization, can you explain a little bit what step therapy is? And do any of these medications require, that you've seen, obviously depending on the insurance you have, I'm assuming some of them probably do require step therapy also, depending on what state you live in and all of that.
So step therapy is, for example, you take the first drug called Rytary, which is a combination of the carbidopa and levodopa extended release. The step therapy for that is carbidopa, levodopa immediate release, which was one of the first drugs that came in the market back, I believe, back in 70s or 80s. that already has a generic, which is a lot cheaper than Rytary. So, excuse me, the insurance company would want you to try that before they move to Rytary.
Mhm.
So the doctor can make a case. I mean, we do that all the time. You know, why I want to start my patient straight on Rytary over carbidopa, levodopa, immediate release. If you have already taken carbidopa, levodopa, immediate release somewhere in the past history, if your current doctor knows that, if their clinic has all that information in somewhere in the chart, it becomes that much easier to prove to insurance company. Yes, patient has tried already the step therapy, so that it becomes a straightforward.
And what about, there are like, so for, there's a lot of talk about the devices that, like the pumps, things like that. So how does that work?
See, very good question. So any pharmaceuticals, you broadly classify into two groups. One, self-administered medications. The second group are provider-administered medications. So the ones that I'm talking are the self-administered medications, mainly the tablets, patches, which goes under the pharmacy benefits.
Mm.
It's a completely different, like for example, if you see in the previous card, you see, this patient may have an Aetna insurance. Aetna contracts CVS Caremark to do the pharmacy benefit administration. So if the patient is getting any of the oral medications, they would go to the CVS Caremark side. If any of those the devices that needs to be implemented or administered by a medical provider, they all go under the medical benefits.
Now, is the device the only thing that goes under the medical benefits, or what about like a duopa pump? Because it is a infusion, right? So when you're going to get, that medication, is that something that we would have to worry about at the pharmacy, or does that still come from the other side of the house?
Side of the house that goes to others, because if you look into it, the way they kind of do the financial math is they don't want to pay separately to the drug and separately to the administration, separately to somebody who's trying to implant the device, and they don't want to do all of that. So they would rather want to have everything under medical benefits and then do one type of a payment. It's a lot more control on that way. So they all are under the other side, on the medical benefit side.
That's really helpful.
Yeah. So most of them, I believe, the durable medical equipment sites are some of the. There are companies out there that exclusively do this only for that particular pump. So they have that expertise to bill only those medical benefits.
And can you, because this is a word, especially, I remember early on being introduced to movement disorder, healthcare, and the word specialty pharmacy comes up often. Can you explain what a specialty pharmacy is for those who may not specifically know?
Totally. It's a very interesting word. The specialty pharmacy, it came into prominence roughly 15 years ago when the market started to have these drugs that are very expensive compared to what the average drug price used to be until then, because the newer medications were coming into the market. So at that time, the insurance company kind of segmented all this pharmacy business into two. One is a retail, which is primarily you see the diabetes and the hypertension and all of that, which is literally cheaper medications. The second one is a specialty, which is a bit more expensive. Most of the specialty medications are, for complicated diseases that needs a bit more navigation, a bit more patient education. Probably the rationale in my mind, what the reason was, hey, if insurance company is spending all these tens and thousands of dollars, they would really want, patient to do well on the medication. They don't want to spend all these dollars and then, end of the day, if the patient doesn't take, there's no use for all that the spend. So keeping all that in mind, so they separated all these expensive medications, which are primarily aligned with these complicated diseases, oncology, MS, movement disorder as well, and rheumatology and all of that. So all those drugs, if you wanted to get, you have to get from certain designated specialty pharmacies. One, the reason behind that is the insurance company wants to make sure that the patients are educated on those drugs. Patients get their drugs, regularly to maintain the adherence, and um, uh, you know, hopefully they will have a better outcomes for all the spent. Is that helpful, or do you want me to elaborate a bit more?
Yeah, no, that is really helpful. I think so. One of the things that I've heard too is that sometimes some of these specialty pharmacies, depending on where you are in the country, they
Mhm,
might not have one of these drugs that
mhm.
you're like a snowbird, and you're usually out in Arizona, or you're down in Florida in the winter, and up north, that sometimes some of these drugs, depending on where you are, they might not even have them in stock. How does that happen, and how do we ensure we don't not have access to our medications?
And my last two slides are I segregated the drugs. What are the drugs that you could get at local pharmacies in Walgreens and CVS everywhere? What are the drugs you have to go to the specialty? And there's a third class of the drugs where the only few pharmacies in the country that have an access to those drugs. I kind of put them in my seventh or eighth slide. Uh, since it came up, maybe I'll just show it to you guys. So drugs access at pharmacies, at local pharmacies, Walgreens, CVS, Giant, and all of this. All these drugs that you have on this list, they all are available at any pharmacies. You can move to Florida, and then you can find the drug in your local Walgreens. And I kind of put like a star for some of them, indicating that those drugs usually needs a prior authorization, which I mentioned at the earlier slide as well.
Mhm.
So that's at your local pharmacies. You come to the next screen. These are the specialty drugs, basically. In the specialty drugs, you have two groups. If you look into the top one, it's a Naurian, Inbrija, and Nuplazid. Based on your insurance, for example, if you have a United Healthcare,
Mhm.
you must get these drugs only from Optum Specialty.
Mhm.
If you have a Cigna, you need to get this drug only from, you will be able to get this drug only from a Credo. If you have Aetna or CareForce in our area, you can only get these drugs from CVS Specialty, those three, right? And you have the other two drugs, if you go below, Gocavri and Epokin. There are, for example, Gocavri is available at only one pharmacy in the country, which is Alliance. The Epokin is only one pharmacy, Circle of Care. This is why it has been a challenge in the movement disorders. You can think about it, how people needs to understand the drugs, what they're getting. And this is a challenge for even the doctors as well, because it changes for everyone. It's a different equation for each patient with different insurances. So that, and I try to put these two slides, if people can have this somewhere with them, and it'll be easy for them to at least
Mhm.
understand what needs to be done. So
And
actually,
we have had a couple questions from folks about the slides. Yes, we will make sure that, thank you, Kelly, for putting that in the chat. But we will make it so that you can, yeah, print them out and download them,
Mhm,
so that you can have them with you or for you.
mhm.
Don't worry, we have the ones that Mohan sent us that are in black and white, so you don't have to worry about your computer's the ink coming out of your printer and all of that, for people who worry about that like I do. So we'll make sure it's easy.
So that's right. This is how we kind of put it. What patients or caregiver can do. I discussed earlier about how to navigate the prior authorization process. Now, prior authorization out of the way. Now, how can I get this drug into my hand? So, if it is any of the drugs that are available at local pharmacy, no problem. But if the drugs happen to be any of these five, that's where the challenges come up. So kind of put few points there. It is so important to understand, know your insurance company's preferred specialty pharmacy. Usually whenever you have your insurance card, they mention, usually at the backside. I mean, if you have a medical insurance, if flip on the backside, they would mention what is your specialty, preferred specialty pharmacy. Or if you have your pharmacy card, they also mention on the pharmacy card as well, what is your uh, uh, insurance's preferred specialty pharmacy. That is so important to know, because if your doctor happens to be prescribing any of these drugs, this is a common thing that I see that happens almost 9 out of 10 times. The doctor would prescribe, Imbresia to your local Walgreens because that's where you're getting your Rytary from. The prescription goes to local Walgreens. They don't have an access to this drug. And unless somebody at the pharmacy helps you, hey, it's not available. It's very few people in that local Walgreens knows where can you get this drug also. So your prescription will be sitting at local Walgreens. It goes nowhere. That is the massive challenge out there. So what I would always ask the patients is like, if your doctor is prescribing any of these drugs and what is your insurance preferred specialty pharmacy, you would ask, doc, if you're prescribing this drug to me, do not send this prescription to my local Walgreens. Send this prescription to my CVS specialty. Unfortunately, doctors don't know what pharmacies to send it. I mean, this is a great help to the doctors. If we could guide them, no, this is not available at my local. Please send this to CVS specialty because that's what my insurance preferred specialty pharmacy. And also, by the way, you also have my insurance information in your computers. It needs a prior authorization. Please get the prior authorization done. It's guiding the doctor.
Well, and I think that's all really good advice. And I did want to ask for clarification. When you say that most doctors don't necessarily know where these are at, would you say that the movement disorder specialists that you work with, obviously, Dr. Pagan and Dr. Torres-Yagi and that crew, they're pros at this, and they have you keeping them in line. But when it comes to, do you see this like more challenges with people who might just go to their primary care or who are getting prescribed some of these medications from a general neurologist? Or do you also see this across the board with, even if they're a movement disorder specialists, they may not know because they're seeing 25 patients, 30 patients a day?
You see that a lot in the primary care, but you do have that gap with the neurologist as well. This is the reason why. I just gave you an example of United Healthcare, Aetna, and Cigna. Those are the big brand names everyone knows. Other than that, there are other, 15 to 20 different insurances out there, small and big and all of that. It's impossible for any doctor to know what is a preferred specialty pharmacy for, I don't know, in my area, there is a plan called MRA Health, Medicaid, MCO. Nobody knows. The doctor won't know what is a preferred specialty pharmacy for these 20 different health plans, especially when they have only their medical insurance on their files. So
absolutely. And even sometimes I know I've been in I remember going to my dentist office once and they're like, I don't even know if we take this. And they did. They're like, oh yeah, but they needed the right person who signed up for it in the office to understand and know how to get into it. So even though somebody in the office might have know that they take that insurance, are they even there that day? So you're your best advocate is essentially what I'm hearing you say is be your best advocate. And if it's your loved ones that are struggling, help them be their best advocates if you can't be with them.
And then another important thing that whenever, because we do help every single patient at our Georgetown. If the patient needs to fill their prescription at CVS specialty, we would call them up. We guide them, we coach them. Explaining them what is a CVS specialty pharmacy. This is a massive mail order. It's not like your local Walgreens that they know you. You're just like a phone call. So when you talk to CVS specialty, uh, you're not talking to the same person every single time. There also, you have to be your own advocate. So that's why it's so important to let the doctor know, hey, when you send it to the CVS specialty, make sure you clean that prior authorization out of the way. Because when I call CVS specialty, I don't want them to tell me it requires a prior auth. Then I need to call you back your office and make you do it. We could bypass all of that. And also, I always coach my patients to give yourself 5 to 7 days before you run out of the medications to call for refills, because sometimes they take 3 to 4 days, sometimes 7 to 8 days to get your prescription. So don't wait for that last pill to call the CVS specialty, especially these mail order specialties, because they do, thousands, hundreds of thousands of patients every day. So that is another important piece, to be proactive.
Absolutely. We had a question. You had been talking about obviously where some of these medications are in certain pharmacies, and somebody had asked if this is changes every year. You know how like your insurance changes every year. We imagine that that's true also for contracts between these companies, or so is it possible that I only can get GoCovery at this one pharmacy, but then a year later or a couple of years later, all of a sudden it's a different pharmacy? Do those kind of things shift often?
Very good question. The Gocovri and Epochian, the manufacturers chose a strategy to have it available at only one pharmacy. That's been the case, I don't know, for the last 8, 9 years, as far as I know.
Mhm.
So irrespective of what the insurance you have, uh, all the insurance, for example, let's say Cigna preferred specialty pharmacy is Accredo, but Cigna doesn't have an access to GoCovery. So what Cigna does is they get a special contract with Alliance. Hey, if any of my Cigna patients comes to you for your GoCovery, let them fill the prescription because the drug is only available at your place. So the bottom two won't change because the manufacturer made it available at only one place. But the one on the top, this all depends on what insurance you have. If you have a Cigna, if it's Accredo, you get all those three from Accredo. If you have a United Healthcare next year, your new specialty pharmacy is Optum Specialty Pharmacy, then you would get all those three only at Optum.
Now, um, just to ask this question, especially about GoCovery and Apoquin, that are only at individual pharmacies, do all of the healthcare or the health insurance providers have contracts for them, or is it potential that you might not be able to get those medications if you're on specific insurance?
All of them have it. All of them have it. The contracts usually. Let me put it simple. I don't want you to worry on that pieces, because this is how it happens. Whenever an insurance company knows that they don't have a pathway to provide a drug to my patient, for the fact that I sold my insurance, I always have a path open how my patient could get the drug.
Mhm.
So that's why, like, no matter what insurance you pick, GoCovery, drug, every insurance in their computers have set it up. If that particular drug is filled from Alliance, pay for it.
And I think that that's really helpful because I know that I would be like, there are times where you hear about people who can't get access to a specific medication. The insurance company continues to deny it and deny it. And the question for me would be, well, is it because that they, don't have it's not available at a specific pharmacy that they can access? What would you say? So what about Medicare? People who are on Medicare, obviously we know that there are plan providers that support the different Medicare. Does that still work the same in terms of accessing medications?
It's exactly the same. You asking, like, if the patient happens to have a Medicare, can they get GoCovery at Alliance?
No, meaning just in general, does the
Same.
process work exactly the same?
Exactly the same.
And what about for people who are maybe not seeing a movement disorder specialist? We know we have folks who, may not live in an area close to where there may be a movement disorder specialist available, and say they're working with their primary care or general neurologist. Um, And even if they were to bring their, you know, their list of medications, what would you suggest to someone if they felt like, you know, that there was another medication they really wanted to try, but their doctor was just like, nope, I'm giving you Cinemet because I don't want to deal with the insurance company.
See, that's why we had that talk right back at that at conference every year. So trying to going back to this piece, uh, this is the rationale, because the doctor is not taking that extra minute to make that effort and make a case to insurance company. Uh, why this new drug is far more superior than the other alternatives, and why the other alternatives the insurance company wants us to try are not appropriate for my patient. That that and that they have to. I mean, unfortunately, the insurance company wants to hear from the doctor because he's the clinician, that he's the one that making the call. So, I mean, I can tell you why there is an hesitations from the doctors, that not wanted to move on to these new drugs because of these challenges what they go through. Because one, they don't have a history of what you have tried. Two, they don't have a staff at the front end that could understand the pharmacy insurance, or they may not even have your pharmacy insurance on file. So all of that, at the end of the day, yeah, I would rather go, okay, it's okay. It's not worth it to put all that effort. Let me go back to the old drug. So, unfortunately, that's what, and that's why if we could take that process in our hands, doc, this is what needs to be done this way. Can you do this for me? You have everything here. You have pharmacy insurance. You have everything. Just need to plug into this electronic platform. Just make a case why this drug is better for me.
And do the insurance companies take into account when the doctor submits their request? Is quality of life something that they take into account? We talk a lot about, especially in Parkinson's, on and off times, and how frequent, like how many medications you're on versus, is that something that how the insurance company qualifies as something working better or not as well as?
No, that's exactly why, because of the quality of life, given that particular subjective patient and different comorbidities patient might have, why I, as a provider, after assessing the patient, think this newer drug
Mhm.
is an appropriate option. And that's the very same reason why I feel the drug you, as an insurance company, asking my patient to try is not ideal.
Mhm.
That's the same dialogue. That's exactly the dialogue. Then the insurance company can't. The insurance company has not seen a patient. When the doctor is making a statement, and holistically, assessing the patient, personally, uh, it has a lot of weightage.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, obviously one of the things that we talk a lot about is the benefit of seeing a movement disorder specialist because they might understand what some of these medications can do. There's just obviously, people who are a little bit more general, you have to have a lot of information. There'd be too many drugs and medications to understand all the idiosyncrasies of all of them. And so seeing a movement disorder specialist for a number of reasons, but also for the best treatment and ensuring quality of life is obviously what we always encourage to our audience. We know that it's not always something that people can access, but we do try to encourage that. And if you're having trouble finding a movement disorder specialist in your area, you can always shoot us an email or give us a call, and we can always see if we can help connect you with someone. We did have another question that came direct to me. It's a little bit of a different situation, but it says, what if I move to an assisted living facility. We do have, or, my parent, I have to move them to an assisted living facility, or memory care facility. Does anything change for me in terms of accessing medications?
Because assisting living facilities, uh, as far as I know, they don't pay for the medications in the
Mhm.
billing. So they would still get their medications the same way you're getting it from Walgreens or CVS and all of that. The only change will be each assisting living facility have their local uh, pharmacy, independent pharmacy they contract with, because a lot of the drugs in the facility needs to be unit dosed. You
Mhm.
can't like in Walgreens, you can't have a bottle and have a 30 pills in the bottle, and you have in the ALFs and nursing homes and all of that, you need a unit dosing packing. So because of that, all the 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 assisting living facilities and nursing homes and all of them, they contract with some independent pharmacy locally who is willing to do that unit dose packing. But otherwise, nothing changes.
Um, and something that I've heard is that that might be a little bit different when you start talking about, I know you're talking about the self-administered medications,
Yeah.
but when
Mm.
it goes into the devices, that's where that can change, right? Especially if you're on Medicaid or Medicare, there's, I think, rules around some of those things, if I'm correct.
Totally. That's perfect because they will be charging like the facility will be billing the medical benefits. So the self-administered drugs are under pharmacy benefits and they're not a pharmacy to bill for the self-administered medications, but for those other devices and all of that, uh, which goes under the medical benefits, the fee for the assisting living and all other probably billing the medical benefits as well. So that makes sense.
Awesome. And I'm just curious if anybody else has any questions, or I know, I think there might have been maybe a slide or two that you hadn't gotten to. I know we kind of jumped around there a little bit, but this has been a good discussion about how can I, again, we really want people to advocate for themselves. We know it's a lot of work. Uh, one of our attendees said that they're banking on us getting tired and jumping through hoops and giving up. And it is, it's like, as you talk about it, it's like, yes, we know, like, not only are you struggling with this illness, but now you're also jumping through hoops to try to get access to your medications.
And I think, if possible, and I always encourage them to go to a movement disorder specialist. For example, at our Georgetown, there's a drug that came into market, I think, this week. The drug name is Crexon.
Yep.
Our doctors have sent close to about 25 to 30 patients in one day. They want to, because that drug is so superior. Dr. Yagi was telling me, like, Mohan, you can't believe how much this is better than Raytari. He sent 25 patients. Just like, I want to change all of these people into the new drug. And everything is, it took us like what, like maybe a couple of hours to go through all of them. Everybody is getting their new medication. So, yeah, that is advantage going to a movement disorder specialist versus yeah.
Especially one that has a Mohan that can help work with them and help them navigate that process.
And but to be honest, it's much easier. But I think if we know this information, a lot of it, we can make the people at the clinic do the work.
Mhm.
If you don't have a dedicated pharmacy like what Georgetown clinics have.
Um, and we did have someone who asked if we could go back to that tip summary to just review.
This one, the how to access the
Yeah, how to
yeah.
access the
So yeah, to how to access was now this is where like once the prior authorization is clear, now you need to navigate all these multiple pharmacies. And for that, you need to understand your insurance, and also you need to understand the drug availability at different pharmacies. So these are the points, that's what I wrote, like know your insurance company and their preferred specialty pharmacy, and know the medications that you cannot get from your local pharmacy. That's where I can put the slide at the bottom. These are the drugs that you cannot get at your local pharmacy. Um, and, you know, again, it's the same thing. Know the drugs that require prior authorization. and provide your pharmacy insurance. Like I think I'm going to the wrong slide here. Let me go back. I'm sorry. Um, Here, okay. Know the medications that you cannot get from your local pharmacies. So this is what I wrote. When the physician prescribes one of the specialty medications, remind them to send it to your insurance company's preferred specialty pharmacy, not your local pharmacy. That way you can avoid a huge delay. You know, when you must get medications from mail order specialty pharmacies, do not wait for the last minute. Always be proactive, call them for shipment at least 5 to 7 days before you run out of the medications. And most importantly, whenever you change insurance, make sure you know your specialty pharmacy of that new insurance and update all that information um, at the clinic.
Now, I know that you had said earlier too that when it comes to these pharmacies, you may be able to talk to your pharmacist if for some reason one of these medications isn't available at your, local. Um, but one of the questions that we had was about how, like, do the pharmacists ever get involved? Or is it really a conversation between your doctor and the insurance company? In terms of the prior authorization.
No, pharmacists usually facilitate. Since we, at our MedStar, we all are same health system. We have clinicians that, clinical pharmacists that we allocated that facilitate that process. But if you are out there with your, neurologist or a local doctor, uh, pharmacists won't get involved in the prior authorization. It's you and your doctor and your insurance company. The
So,
most what they can do is to let you know this drug needs a prior authorization. That's it.
so but the pharmacist can kind of see what's going on to a point on the back end between the doctor and the company, or not really at all.
Not at all. They won't have a visibility.
Okay. So they really can just see, was this approved? Can we get paid for it? Was it given the approval, and just kind of and fill the prescription and see you on your way. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mohan. I think last week we also did, we were talking about Medicare this year, or this week we're talking about access. So if there are other questions that have come up while you've been attending, or if you're watching this later, or you were hoping to get something out of this conversation, there's a lot that goes into access and how can we access our medications and that the entire system that we can talk about. So please feel free to reach out to us. Let us know. This is a very important topic. It's a very hot topic right now, especially with just all the things going on in Congress and the new Medicare reforms and all of that. So please send those to us if other questions have come up that we can do maybe have Mohan on and do another topic. But thank you, Mohan. You are incredible. I know that your passion for trying to help people get access to the treatments that can really help improve their quality of life is something that really motivates you and is very motivating and definitely making change in the community. So thank you so much for your time today. And thank you to the community. For those of you that are around and are online, we do PMD Alliance wave goodbye as a thank you. So if you want to turn on your cameras and we can wave goodbye. And we will send these out later and make sure that you get these slides so that you can utilize them. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, everyone.
Thank you.